"What's the janitor's daughter doing here?" The voice wasn't loud, but it carried sharp enough to slice through the polished silence of the Stonebridge Tech lobby. Maya Williams kept her shoulders straight as she stepped off the elevator, her leather-bound portfolio tucked tightly under her arm. She didn't flinch, didn't look around. She'd heard worse growing up. She'd been called names since the 3rd grade, when classmates learned her father mopped floors for a living. But today wasn't about them. It was about her. The receptionist barely glanced at her. "Interview?" she asked, eyebrows arching above perfectly mascaraed lashes. Maya nodded. "Junior Systems Analyst, Maya Williams." There was a flicker of hesitation before the receptionist tapped a few keys. "Top floor. Mr. Stratton's office. You'll need this." She handed her a visitor's badge, the plastic laminate still warm from the printer. Maya took it with a quiet thank you, then turned toward the gleaming glass elevator. Her reflection stared back. Brown skin, minimal makeup, hair pulled into a neat bun, and a pair of soft eyes that had seen more nights cleaning code than partying. The second-hand blazer was pressed. The shoes were polished. She belonged here, even if nobody else thought so. As the elevator climbed, she thought of her father. Robert Williams had worked in this building for 28 years, never missed a day. He never complained when executives treated him like furniture. When Maya was little, he'd let her do homework in the security booth while he did his rounds. "Smart girls don't wait to be noticed," he used to say. "They make themselves impossible to ignore." The elevator dinged. The doors opened to a hallway lined with abstract art and spotless glass. A young assistant greeted her with a polite nod and led her past open concept offices and silent executives behind translucent partitions. It felt like walking through another world, one where her presence was an anomaly. She was led into a sleek conference room with views of the Atlanta skyline. A long obsidian table stretched across the room like a runway. At the far end sat a man in a tailored navy suit, reading something on a tablet. He didn't look up. "Maya Williams?" he asked flatly, still scrolling. "Yes, sir." "Sit." She did, carefully placing her folder on the table. Her hands were steady, but her pulse thumped in her ears. Michael Stratton finally looked up. Early 40s, razor-sharp jawline, Ivy League energy. He studied her like a problem he wasn't interested in solving. "You coded in C++, Python, and R? Self-taught?" "Yes, sir. Since I was 17. "No Ivy League?" "No, sir." "You studied at South Fulton Community College?" "Yes." He leaned back, expression unreadable. "And your resume says you worked maintenance part-time while attending night classes. Your father still works here, doesn't he?" "Yes. Building services." There was a pause. His lips curled slightly, just shy of a smirk. "You know, we get hundreds of applications for this role, some from Stanford, Michigan T. I'm sure you do. So, why are you sitting here?" Maya held his gaze. "Because I can do the job better than most of them." That earned her a blink. Stratton folded his hands. "Confidence. Noted. We've already run one technical test, but let's raise the stakes. See that terminal over there?" She followed his gesture to a coding station by the window. "You've got 12 minutes. Optimize the data filter script currently used by our analytics wing. It's written in-house. Let's see if the janitor's daughter can handle enterprise-level code." He said it casually, like a joke. But Maya didn't smile. She rose without a word, walked to the terminal, and sat. The code on the screen was familiar. She'd seen this structure before, not here, but in side projects and forums she used to haunt during late nights. The script was bulky, wasteful in its loops. It wouldn't be hard, but she knew she had to do more than fix it. She had to make it sing. Her fingers moved quickly, dancing across the keyboard in rhythm with her thoughts. She tuned out the room, the pressure, the sting of Stratton's voice. All that mattered was the logic. 10 minutes later, she stood. "It's done." Stratton raised an eyebrow and walked over. He tapped through the console, skimmed her edits, and then reran the process. Silence. The script completed in half the time. And cleaner. He looked at her, eyes narrowing. "Who helped you with this?" "No one. I've written similar tools for public access data projects. I have some samples in my portfolio." He didn't respond. Instead, he turned to his assistant. "Pull up the AgriScan open-source submissions from last year. See if her name matches the contributor tags." Maya returned to her seat. For a moment, the entire conference room was frozen. A quiet hush fell over the space. People who had been smirking just moments ago now stared at the screen, speechless. Their smiles faded, one by one, as if reality had crept in and pressed its finger to their lips. Maya's heartbeat steadied. Back on the first floor, Robert Williams wiped a smudge off the marble tile near the entryway, the same floor he'd cleaned every night for nearly 3 decades. He paused for a second and looked toward the ceiling. Maybe, just maybe, today would be different. And if that moment stirred something in you, if Maya's quiet strength reminded you of someone who fought twice as hard for half the recognition, then don't let her story stop here. Share it. Comment below and tell us, who in your life taught you never to flinch, even when the world doubted you? And don't forget to subscribe, because there are more stories like Maya's, and some of them might just be your own. Maya stepped out of the glass tower with the feeling of being both seen and invisible at once. The early afternoon sun reflected off the sleek windows of Stonebridge Tech's headquarters as her shoes clicked against the granite pavement. She paused for a moment at the edge of the parking circle, resisting the urge to check her phone. No call came. No email buzzed. Silence. She exhaled, then walked to the nearby MARTA stop where her father would be waiting. The breeze caught the edge of her blazer, lifting it like a curtain. The city roared on, but inside her chest, everything was still ringing with Michael Stratton's stunned expression. Her father stood near the bench just outside the transit station, his arms crossed and his eyes scanning the exit. He had that same look he always wore when he was worried, but trying not to show it, like a man listening for something distant. She smiled as she approached. "Well?" he asked, voice low but curious. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned into him, hugging him tightly. "I did what you taught me," she whispered. "I showed up. That night, over simple dinner, baked chicken, collard greens, cornbread still warm in the pan." Maya tried to push the day out of her mind, but it clung to her skin like sweat. Her fingers kept twitching, as if still typing. Her mind kept replaying Stratton's face when he scrolled through her code. His smirk had vanished as if someone wiped it clean. "What if they never call?" she asked suddenly. Robert glanced up from his plate. "Then they don't call. Doesn't mean you weren't enough. It just means they couldn't see it." She nodded, but her stomach churned. Not because of doubt, because of something else, a growing itch in the back of her mind. Something had changed in that room. She felt it. And not just in the way people looked at her. Something deeper. Stratton hadn't just been surprised. He had been startled. She didn't sleep much. The next morning, her phone rang at 8:02 a.m. "Miss Williams?" The voice was crisp, efficient. "Yes? Mr. Stratton would like to meet with you again today. 3 p.m. his office." She sat up straight in bed, blinking. "May I ask what this is regarding?" He didn't specify, just that it's urgent. After hanging up, she stared at the phone for a long time. She didn't move until her father knocked softly and pushed open the door. "You okay?" "They want to see me again." He raised an eyebrow. "Second interview?" "I think it's more than that." At 2:50 p.m., Maya stepped back into the building she thought she was done with. But this time, something had shifted. The receptionist didn't arch her eyebrow. The security guard nodded at her with something that resembled familiarity. The elevator ride felt shorter. Or maybe she just wasn't afraid of heights anymore. This time, she didn't wait in the glass lobby. Stratton himself met her at the boardroom entrance. He wasn't smiling, not in the usual corporate way. His expression was unreadable, calculated. "Miss Williams," he said with a nod. "Come in." She followed him into the room, but instead of sitting at the long table, he motioned toward a smaller round table near the corner. 2 chairs. A carafe of water. No audience. No test. "First," he said, pouring a glass for her, "I owe you an apology." Maya blinked. "Excuse me?" "I reviewed the code again last night, and then I did something I should have done earlier. I ran a background check on Agriscan, the public project that's been quietly revolutionizing small farm analytics across the South." She tilted her head slightly, cautious. "You built that, all of it, from scratch. And you released it open source with no monetization, no patents, no press." "Yes." He leaned back, staring at her like he was still trying to make sense of her. "You understand you could have sold that system for millions." Maya shook her head. "That wasn't the point." "What was the point then?" "My father always says if you can fix something that helps people, you should. Not everything's about profit." The silence between them deepened. For the first time, Stratton looked unsure, and in that uncertainty, she saw something unexpected. Respect. "I need someone like you," he said. Maya frowned. "For what?" "I'm building a new division, focused on rural innovation, smart tools for overlooked markets, agriculture, logistics, local infrastructure. You'd lead the team." She nearly laughed. "Lead? I thought I was applying for a junior position." "You were," he said plainly. "But you don't belong behind someone else's keyboard. You belong in front." She stared at him. The weight of his words didn't feel like flattery. It felt like challenge, like an offer with consequences. "And why me?" she asked slowly. "You have a dozen candidates with MBAs and Silicon Valley experience." "Yes, but none of them built a precision farming platform using borrowed laptops and free libraries. And none of them made me question how I judge people." He paused, then added with a wry smile, "Besides, I think I need someone around here who can remind me that real intelligence doesn't always wear a tailored suit." She wanted to smile. She didn't. "Not yet. One condition," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "I want to build a pipeline. Internships, apprenticeships for students from community colleges, rural tech programs, and historically black colleges. Kids who don't get in the door otherwise." He studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Done." As Maya left the office 30 minutes later, contract unsigned but promised, she noticed something strange in the hallway. A woman middle-aged, polished, clearly executive staff stared at her as she passed. Not with disdain, but something else. Confusion? Unease? Envy? Maya brushed it off until the elevator doors closed behind her. But the feeling didn't leave. It stayed like a shadow in the back of her mind. That evening, over dinner, she told her father everything. He listened, nodding now and then. His fork paused mid-air as she described the offer. "You trust him?" he asked finally. "I'm not sure," she said. "Then don't trust his words. Trust what you can verify." That night, Maya sat at her desk and pulled up a blank screen. She wasn't done being curious. She typed in a few keywords, tracing the development logs of the software she had optimized that day. It was something she'd barely glanced at before a system used to handle public analytics for citywide logistics, but something about its structure had felt too off. She scanned deeper. Error logs, buried directories, unusual permissions. Then she found it a dormant string, barely noticeable. A hidden sub-process pinging external servers every 72 hours, encrypted, masked as maintenance. Maya's fingers froze. She copied the code, created a sandbox, and began unpacking it. Every line revealed more questions. Every loop led to more trails that shouldn't exist. She leaned back in her chair, heart suddenly racing. This wasn't just inefficient code. This was surveillance. Someone inside Stonebridge was using their public-facing software to collect something. And Michael Stratton knew the system well. Too well to miss this. Maya stared at the screen. This wasn't just a job offer. It was an invitation to stand on a fault line. Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat hunched over her screen in the soft glow of her desk lamp, watching lines of code like someone reading the terms of a deal made with the devil. The deeper she traced the hidden sub-process, the more it disturbed her. This wasn't just lazy engineering. It was intentional, deliberate. The script masked itself inside a routine maintenance update, mimicking packet transfers to avoid firewall detection. It ran silently and regularly, compiling datasets on user behavior, geographic movement, IP clustering, keyword patterns. Worse, the data wasn't just stored internally, it was being mirrored off-site, to a third-party domain masked behind multiple proxies. Maya ran a tracer route. The signal bounced from Dallas to Zurich, then dead-ended into a private server node registered under a dummy shell corporation. She recognized enough patterns to know someone had gone to great lengths to hide this. She leaned back, exhausted but alert. Her father's words circled in her mind. Don't trust words. Trust what you can verify. Well, she had verified enough to know that Stonebridge Tech's flagship analytics tool, the one they proudly offered to local governments and public institutions, was acting like spyware. At 6:17 a.m., she closed her laptop and walked out to the front porch. Her father was already there, sipping coffee from his weathered mug. his boots laced and lunch pail at his side. "You're up early," he said without turning. "Didn't sleep." He looked at her, noting the shadows under her eyes. "Something wrong?" She hesitated. "What if someone gave you a chance, a big one, but that chance was sitting on top of something rotten?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he handed her his coffee. She took a sip, bitter and hot. "Then maybe that chance isn't a gift," he finally said. "Maybe it's a test." That word stayed with her. Test. At 10 a.m., Maya walked back into Stonebridge, this time wearing the badge they had emailed to her the night before. Temporary clearance for division transition meetings. Official enough to pass through security, vague enough not to raise eyebrows. The elevator felt different now. Less like a glass box carrying her to opportunity, and more like an artery pumping her towards something that had already infected the system. On the 17th floor, the hallway was quieter than usual. She made her way to the new division's project bay, where a few interns and engineers were setting up laptops, connecting screens, unpacking whiteboards. Everyone smiled politely. No one asked her who she was. Her name had already started to circulate, the girl who rewrote the code. The janitor's daughter who might be leading a team. She used the moment. Saturday at a corner terminal. Logged in under the admin guest credentials they'd issued, and went to work. For the next 3 hours, she isolated the subprocess from the public tool and replicated it in a sandbox. She checked server logs from the last 30 days. 27 municipal agencies across the country had been using the tool, city councils, school districts, even a veterans hospital data network. And all of them were being watched. She didn't want to believe it, but there it was. She pulled up one data stream. It logged keystrokes. Another captured real-time behavioral metadata, including login times that aligned almost exactly with employee schedules. One script was even intercepting rudimentary microphone signals and voice snippets through Chrome browser permissions. Nothing full, nothing dramatic, but enough to flag keywords. It wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. She saved everything on a thumb drive and slipped it into her blazer. Her fingers were trembling. At lunch, Michael Stratton found her. He walked in like he owned the floor, which, technically, he did, but this time his eyes didn't scan her like a curiosity. This time, there was calculation. "Walk with me," he said casually. She followed him down the back corridor, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Midtown Atlanta. Outside, the city moved with Friday rhythm, steady, indifferent. "I've spoken with the board," Stratton began. "Your appointment is all but finalized. We're drafting the full offer today." She said nothing. "You'll have hiring authority, budgetary input, freedom to design the team as you see fit." Still, she said nothing. He stopped walking, turned to face her. "You're not smiling." Maya met his gaze. "Should I be?" A beat passed between them, silent, pressurized. "You found it," he said finally. She didn't blink. "I suspected it when you asked to review the logs," he continued, voice softer now. "That script's been part of our infrastructure since before the acquisition. Legacy tech, buried inside a product I inherited." "That's not what the commit logs say," Maya said. "The update started 3 months ago, after you took over." Stratton's jaw tensed. "We needed leverage, competitive insight. You know how this industry works. This isn't industry strategy. It's mass surveillance." He stepped closer. "It's how we stay ahead. The difference between a billion-dollar valuation and a failed startup is who sees what first, and who you betray to get there." His voice cooled. "I brought you here because I thought you understood systems, that you had vision." "I do," Maya said, stepping back. "And I see this one clearly. It's rotten at the core." Stratton straightened his jacket, then gave a thin smile. "Be careful, Maya. Ambition is a fire. It can light your way, or burn everything you've built." She stared at him. "I didn't build this, and I won't let it burn anyone else." When she returned to her workstation, her access was restricted. Her credentials returned permission denied on core files. Her messages stopped syncing. The warning was clear, so she left. That night, sitting at the kitchen table, she told her father everything, every detail, the data logs, the confrontation, the shutdown. He listened quietly, his large hands folded, calloused fingers twitching only once when she mentioned surveillance at the VA. "You going to report it?" he asked. "I don't know who to trust." He nodded slowly, then said, Then start with someone who still remembers what trust is supposed to feel like. The next morning, Maya stood in the parking lot of a quiet federal building in downtown Atlanta. She wore the same blazer, the same shoes, but inside her pocket was a letter addressed to the U.S. Department of Justice Cyber Crimes Division. And inside the envelope, a copy of everything she'd found. She slipped it into the external drop box, then turned to leave. Behind her, a black SUV sat idling. A man in a gray suit leaned against it, arms crossed. She'd seen him before once in the lobby, once near Stratton's office. Security? Legal? He didn't approach, just watched. Maya walked away. Her hands were steady. Her breath was even. Somewhere behind her, a system had started to tremble, and she was done pretending not to hear it. 2 days passed without a word. No calls, no emails, no security warnings, just quiet. Too quiet. Maya checked her inbox every hour, her thumb hovering over the refresh button as if sheer willpower might summon an answer. But the silence wasn't peace. It was pressure, the kind that builds before a structure buckles. She kept working from home, tracking small pieces of the network still visible from public-facing endpoints. Most of the sub-process she'd exposed had been scrubbed already, but remnants remained, like footprints left in concrete that hadn't dried fast enough. Some of the servers had new labels now, IPs masked behind unfamiliar CDN proxies. Stratton was cleaning up fast and methodically. She knew that meant one thing. Someone had read her report, and they were scared. On the third morning, she returned from a quick grocery run to find a plain white envelope slid under her apartment door. No stamp, no name. Inside was a folded piece of paper with 5 words in bold, centered, "Don't ruin a good thing." She stood there frozen, keys still in her hand, bag of groceries hanging from her wrist. Her apartment door stood ajar. She hadn't left it that way. Maya stepped back into the hallway, her heart racing. She took the stairs down, 2 at a time, exited onto the street, and walked fast for 3 blocks before stopping beneath the shade of a sycamore tree. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was crystal clear. This wasn't just pressure. It was a warning. And it was personal now. That evening, she sat across from her father at their kitchen table, the same table they'd used since she was in middle school, with the carved initials still etched into one corner. He listened quietly as she explained, then unfolded the paper she handed him. "Did they come into the apartment?" he asked. "I don't know. Nothing was taken, but I didn't leave the door cracked." He frowned. "Then it doesn't matter if they took something. They left something." She nodded. "And they want me to feel it. They want me to second-guess everything." His hand tightened on the paper. "I've cleaned floors in that building for nearly 30 years, Maya, but the dirtiest part of it was never on the ground." She exhaled. "I'm not going to stop." He looked at her then, not as a daughter, but as someone who had chosen her fight. "I didn't raise you to." Later that night, she made 2 copies of the flash drive and stored them in different locations, one in a safe deposit box downtown, the other mailed to a P.O. box registered under her friend Dominique's name, a paralegal who owed her a favor and knew how to keep quiet. She also printed hard copies of her full report, not because she thought they'd read paper, but because it was harder to delete ink. 3 days later, Maya received an unexpected call. "This is Ava McLaren," the voice said, "senior investigator with the Department of Justice. You filed a report under Maya R. Williams regarding Stonebridge Tech's software activity." Maya sat up straight, her hand tightening around the phone. "Yes, we've reviewed your submission. I have a few questions and a request to meet in person. Secure setting." "When?" "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. 435 Peachtree, sublevel 3. Will anyone else be there?" "No one from Stonebridge. That's a promise." Click. The next morning, Maya passed through 3 layers of security checkpoints before being led into a narrow conference room that smelled of steel and coffee. Ava McLaren looked nothing like the government suits Maya had imagined. She was in her 50s, black, with sharp gray curls and eyes that missed nothing. Her handshake was firm. Her tone was measured, not friendly, but not cold. "We've been watching Stonebridge for some time," she began. "We've suspected violations, mostly antitrust, IP theft, a few whistleblower silences, but nothing concrete. What you sent us, however." She opened a folder and pushed it toward Maya. "That's concrete." Inside were printouts of the same sub-process Maya had flagged, but now annotated with federal markers, color-coded risks, compliance notes. Next to the diagrams was a list of affected institutions, city government offices, 2 school districts, a veterans data portal, and an energy co-op in the Midwest. You understand the magnitude of this? Yes. Ava tapped a line on the page. This sub-process is built on a modified federal toolkit, which means whoever embedded this did so knowing it violated both public trust and national security compliance. We can't just press charges. We need to make sure the whole tree comes down, not just a branch. Maya nodded slowly. So what do you need from me? Access. Details. Everything you remember from the day you discovered it. The names of people in the room. Who gave you access. Who might have known what. I already gave you all that. We need more. There was a pause. Then Ava leaned forward, voice quieter. We want you to go back in. Maya blinked. Excuse me? They haven't revoked your offer. You're still slated to lead that rural innovation team. That position gives you clearance, visibility, and the ability to watch what they're doing next. You want me to spy for you. We want you to keep doing what you've already done. Pay attention. But now, with support. Quiet support. Maya swallowed. And if I say no? Ava folded her hands. Then we move forward without the inside data. We go slower. We risk more. And someone else, maybe someone less careful, ends up in your place. Silence settled in the room like dust. Finally, Maya spoke. One condition. Ava raised an eyebrow. Go on. When this is over, if you bring down Stratton, I want the story told. Publicly. Truthfully. Not buried in some sealed indictment or forgotten memo. Ava studied her for a moment, then nodded. Deal. That afternoon, Maya sat in the Stonebridge atrium once more, this time in a waiting area just outside the executive offices. Employees passed her without comment, a few even nodding. The air felt different, like her presence was no longer strange, just new. Stratton's assistant approached. Mr. Stratton will see you now. She stood and followed, her heartbeat steady, face composed. She entered the office, but this time she didn't sit. She stood across from him, meeting his eyes without a flicker of hesitation. He gestured to the chair. I assume you've had time to think. I have. And? I'll accept the position. He smiled, small, smug, satisfied. Good. She paused. But you should know. I don't forget warnings. Or envelopes. He stiffened ever so slightly. Neither do I. They shook hands a moment that felt more like the opening bell of a quiet war. As Maya walked out of the office, she passed a cleaning cart parked near the corner. Her father stood behind it, mop in hand. He met her eyes, and though he didn't speak, he nodded once. A simple gesture, a quiet vow. She kept walking. The first crack had appeared in the mirror, and Maya was ready to widen it. The first week of Maya's return to Stonebridge passed in a blur of polite nods, onboarding meetings, and orchestrated smiles. Stratton had personally announced her appointment as Director of Rural Tech Innovation, a title that turned heads and raised eyebrows. Most employees hadn't expected someone like her, young, quiet, without an Ivy League crest on her resume, to claim an office with windows and hiring power. But Maya moved through it all with calm precision. She smiled when appropriate, asked sharp questions during briefings, and kept her eyes wide open. Underneath the rhythm of task lists and department updates, she listened for missteps, for shadows, for whispers between the lines of what was said and what wasn't. By Friday morning, she'd assembled a core team of 5 engineers, all handpicked from overlooked corners of the tech world. 2 were from community colleges. 1 had military logistics experience but no degree. Another was a single mother who coded through night shifts at a hospital. The last was a former Stonebridge janitor who had been quietly building apps on broken Chromebooks in the staff lounge. Maya had told Stratton they'd work. He hadn't objected, just raised an eyebrow and muttered something about unconventional talent. She didn't care. She didn't need approval, just access. And she had it. Late that Friday evening, long after the offices had cleared out and only the hum of climate control remained, Maya sat alone in her office. She stared at her dual monitors, one displaying lines of code, the other running packet analysis in the background. She was using her team's upcoming AI irrigation software as a cover while behind the scenes. She was combing through access logs and server activity for anything Stratton might still be hiding. So far, she'd uncovered a few anomalies. IP addresses outside the approved cluster, transfer schedules that didn't match deployment timetables, but nothing definitive. It was like someone had cleaned the house just enough to hide the blood under the carpet. She was leaning in closer when her phone buzzed a private message through the internal chat system. It was from Jackson Lin, the former janitor turned coder. Jackson Lin. You alone? She typed back. Maya W. Yes. What's up? A pause. Jackson Lin. Can I show you something? Not here. Garage level B. 10 minutes. Her breath caught. She hesitated, then typed. Maya W. Coming. She grabbed her light jacket, slipped the flash drive into her pocket out of habit, and walked quickly through the quiet halls. The elevator ride down to level B was silent except for the low hum of motion. When the doors opened, the garage was nearly empty, washed in pale yellow light and the smell of concrete and motor oil. Jackson stood beside his rusted pickup, eyes scanning the shadows. He was in his mid-30s, lanky, with fingers that twitched when he was thinking. You sure no one's tracking this chat? He asked, voice low. I scrubbed it yesterday, she said. End-to-end encryption. We're good. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a cracked tablet. I was doing diagnostics on the sandbox you set up for our irrigation module. Just running through permissions. Okay. Well, I found something weird. He handed her the tablet. She looked at the screen. It showed a recursive loop that should have terminated in a clean log. But instead, it triggered a background process zone that accessed user mic input at random intervals. This isn't in any of our modules, Jackson whispered. I've read your code. I've read mine. This didn't come from us. Maya stared at it, her stomach tightening. What's it doing? He shook his head. Hard to say yet. It doesn't store anything locally. It transmits to a temporary buffer, wipes, then reboots. I only caught it because it triggered a latency spike. Have you told anyone else? Number just you. Don't. Not yet. He nodded. Maya, I trust you. But this isn't just bad code. This is surveillance disguised inside our product. If this goes live with our name on it, it won't, she said firmly. Not on my watch. She copied the files onto her flash drive and thanked him. But inside, the certainty she'd been carrying began to shake. Someone inside the company, perhaps even higher than Stratton was, embedding active surveillance tech into a product labeled as community support. And if her team pushed it to market, they would take the fall. Back upstairs, Maya stayed in the office long after the security lights dimmed. She dug into the source of the module Jackson had uncovered and followed its signature to a branch she hadn't accessed before, hidden behind layers of contractor tags and administrative locks. It wasn't easy, but she broke through. What she found made her feel sick. The microphone scripts weren't limited to the rural tech suite. They had appeared before in other divisions, under different names. One flagged as Client Engagement Monitor, another as Passive Behavior Indexing, and each bore the same terminal tag, Stratton exe flag. She leaned back slowly in her chair. Stratton wasn't just aware of the surveillance tech. He had tagged it for tracking. He was watching the watchers, and the infrastructure had been in place long before her discovery. She wasn't exposing a system. She was walking into a trap laid years ago. Her hand moved to her phone, but she paused. She couldn't call Ava McLaren yet. Not without more. Not without something that couldn't be denied. And then she remembered. 2 weeks ago, Stratton had mentioned a private server used only for his division's prototype logs. He had spoken about it in passing, dismissive, but Maya had noted it. It was housed not on the corporate cloud, but in a climate-controlled mini-vault inside the server room 3 floors below. It required biometric access, and she had just been cleared that morning. She didn't sleep. Instead, she drank stale coffee, changed into jeans and sneakers, and waited until the early hours of Saturday morning, when the skeleton crew of overnight security was most distracted. By 3:20 a.m., she had reached the subfloor server room. She pressed her hand to the biometric panel. The scanner blinked once, then green lit her entry. Inside, cold air wrapped around her. Fans whirred. Red and green lights blinked in rhythm. She moved quickly, found the drive she needed, plugged in. There, buried in encrypted folders, were detailed logs recordings, audio files, voice-tagged metadata, user identifiers mapped to public servers. And there his voice. A test run. Stratton, recorded, speaking into a room mic during a product demo. Most people won't even know they're being heard. That's the beauty. Real-time behavior input without false reporting bias. Imagine what marketing can do with this kind of insight. Maya copied everything. Every file, every voice tag, every log entry. By the time the sun rose over Atlanta, Maya was sitting in her car parked beneath a diner 5 blocks from her apartment. Her father had always said truth didn't need to shout. It just needed to exist. Now, it did. But truth, she realized, wasn't the end of a battle. It was only the beginning. Maya barely touched her eggs. The diner was quiet, its morning rhythm just starting to hum. Outside, Atlanta woke slowly, delivery trucks wheezing to curbs, early risers gripping coffee in styrofoam cups. But inside, at a corner booth lined with chipped vinyl, Maya sat still, a laptop open before her, and a flash drive burning a hole in her pocket. She hadn't gone home. She couldn't, not after what she'd found. The recordings were damning not just ethically, but criminally. Stratton's voice had walked her through the entire logic of their surveillance program, manipulating city contracts, rebranding behavior, tracking software, even suggesting pilot programs in rural schools because those places don't push back. It was all there, time-stamped, unedited. She looked at the timestamp again. 6 months ago. That meant Stratton hadn't just approved this system, he had created it. Long before Maya's interview, long before the code tests, he'd been waiting for someone like her to help legitimize it. She wasn't a disruptor to him. She was a pawn, a clean face for a dirty engine. The realization made her jaw clench. She packed up and left, stepping out into the morning light. Her first call was to Ava McLaren. "I've got it," Maya said. There was no hesitation. "Meet me. 45 minutes. Same location." This time, when she passed through the checkpoints at the DOJ building, the guards greeted her by name. She was escorted deeper into the facility sublevel 4, a room with no windows and 2 cameras embedded in opposite corners. Ava was already there, a legal pad in hand, 2 agents seated behind her. Maya sat and placed the flash drive on the table. "It's all on there. Audio, code logs, metadata maps. You'll want to start with the exec flag folder." Ava plugged it in. One of the agents adjusted his earpiece. 5 minutes of silence passed as they reviewed the contents. Then Ava leaned back, arms crossed. "This changes everything. You believe me now?" "I believed you before," Ava said. "But this is proof. Usable. Actionable. And it explains a few things we couldn't trace." One of the agents looked up. "If this goes public, we're looking at federal charges. Not just data misuse, but contract fraud, civil rights violations, and potential violations of national security code due to the embedded software being used in public hospitals." Maya stayed quiet. She was shaking, but inside that shake was a cold, solid center. "What happens next?" she asked. "We prepare for a raid," Ava said. "But carefully, quietly. Stratton's got influence, and he's smart enough to run if he gets even a whiff of this." Maya nodded. "So what do you need me to do?" Ava met her eyes. "Stay the course. Keep playing the role. If he trusts you, he'll get sloppy, and we'll be ready when he does. I'm not afraid of him." "Good," Ava said. "But be careful. Cornered men bite." Back at Stonebridge, the building hummed with routine. Employees poured into elevators, key cards beeped at every door, and Stratton's name echoed from conference rooms to catered meetings. Maya returned to her floor like nothing had changed, but everything had. That afternoon, Stratton summoned her. He stood by the window of his top-floor office, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, a man at ease, or pretending to be. "You've been quiet," he said. "Busy," she replied. He nodded. "I've been reviewing the latest build from your team. Impressive, very streamlined." "Thank you." He turned to face her fully. "You know, when I first met you, I underestimated you." She didn't respond. "You walked into this place with nothing but a name tag and a resume printed on thick paper. No alumni network, no family ties, just grit. That takes something." "It takes more than you think," she said softly. "I'm offering you a seat at the table, Maya. Real influence. But influence comes with a price. She looked at him. What kind of price? Discretion. A beat passed. Then another. Do you know what happens to people who refuse discretion? He asked, still smiling. They lose power, and they're forgotten. Maya leaned forward slightly. And what happens to people who abuse power? He tilted his head. They usually get richer. She smiled. Until someone notices. He laughed, but there was tension in it. A slight pull around his eyes. He was watching her now, closely. As she walked out, she passed his assistant, the same one who'd once barely looked at her. Now the woman stood when Maya passed. That was the thing about rising tides. They made everyone uncomfortable. That night, Maya received a second anonymous note. This one slipped under her windshield wiper in the parking deck. You should have stayed quiet. It was printed in the same bold typeface. No fingerprints. No camera in the garage had captured the moment. Maya checked twice. Back at home, her father watched her pace the living room. Same person as before? He asked. Probably. You scared? She thought for a moment. Not for me. For the people who'll be blamed when it all goes down. My team. The contractors. They've got no idea what they're sitting on. Robert stood slowly and went to his closet. When he returned, he was holding a small box. He opened it and pulled out an old badge from his first year at Stonebridge. Before it was called Stonebridge. Before Stratton ever showed up. They used to call me invisible, he said. But you're not invisible anymore, Maya. And that scares them. She looked at the badge. The name worn but still readable. Williams, R. He placed it on the table. They see you now, so make them look harder. Sunday night, Maya called Jackson Lynn. Emergency team huddle, she said. Off-site, no devices. They met in a park near Midtown, under a covered pavilion. No laptops, no phones, just 5 people in trust. There's something wrong with the software, she told them. Worse than a bug, worse than broken code. It's watching people, listening. Silence fell. I can't prove everything yet, she said, but I will. And when I do, you need to decide, are you in this for tech or for truth? Jackson was the first to speak. You already know. Then Camille, the military vet. I didn't come here to build spyware. One by one, they agreed. Quiet, but firm. That night, Maya returned home exhausted, but less alone. In her room, she reopened the files. Every time she listened to Stratton's voice, it felt colder, more calculating. She wasn't just exposing a flaw. She was pulling a thread through the very fabric of the company's success. And she was close. Close enough to see the cracks. But cracks, she knew, didn't break walls. Pressure did. And the pressure was building. By Monday morning, Maya knew the clock was ticking. Every second she spent walking the corridors of Stonebridge now carried the weight of something bigger than her own story. It wasn't just about being underestimated anymore. It wasn't even about Stratton. It was about a system designed to stay hidden and a girl who was finally seeing all the way through it. Her team had been briefed, quietly, off-grid. Each member knew what they were building and what they weren't. She'd double-checked every line of code going into their pilot product. No leaks, no sub-processes. Just clean, human-driven engineering meant to help, not spy. But that wasn't enough. She had the recordings, the audit logs, the source code trail. She even had names indirect references to contractors who had helped mask the surveillance modules under efficiency upgrades. What she didn't have yet was a direct connection between Stratton and the off-site servers handling the Blank's data. Until she did, the DOJ was holding, and Stratton was starting to move. By noon, 2 engineers in another division were abruptly reassigned. By 3, Maya heard rumors that the security team was vetting access logs from the past month. A quiet sweep. No announcement. No internal memo. But people noticed. Stratton was cleaning house, which meant he was scared. At 5:10 p.m., Maya received a calendar invite. Title, Strategic Direction Discussion. Time, 6 p.m. Location, Executive Briefing Room 18A. Sender, Stratton. She stared at the screen. It wasn't his usual pattern. Stratton preferred surprise. He liked to keep people off balance. Scheduling a meeting in advance? That was new. She accepted, then messaged Jackson. Maya, if I'm not back by 7, call Ava. Jackson Lynn, 701. Got it. She changed into a clean blazer and tied her hair back. No jewelry, no distractions, just the flash drive in her inner pocket always. When she entered room 18A, the door was already open. Stratton stood near the window again, arms crossed, his silhouette outlined by the amber light of sunset. On the table sat a manila folder, a bottle of mineral water, and 2 glasses. "Have a seat," he said, not turning. She did. "I've been thinking," he continued, "about legacy." Maya said nothing. "You build a company like this piece by piece, deal by deal, and at some point, you stop being a person. You become the scaffolding, the steel." She watched him closely. "And what happens when someone starts pulling out your bolts?" Now he turned, walked slowly toward her, picked up the manila folder and slid it across the table. Inside were printed screenshot images from her laptop screen, packet traces, code comparisons, a diagram from one of her DOJ reports. Maya didn't blink. "We flagged the anomalies 2 weeks ago," he said calmly. "Security's been tracking irregular activity ever since, including a thumb drive upload made from server Vault C at 3:41 a.m. last Saturday." He poured water into both glasses. "You're smart. I underestimated you. I won't make that mistake again." She closed the folder slowly. "Then why am I still sitting here?" He smiled faintly. "Because you haven't done anything illegal. Yet, you've noticed things. That's not a crime. But what happens next? That's a choice. You're threatening me." I'm offering you the future," he said, placing the second glass in front of her. "You can keep your title, your team. We can even fund your internship program. Full discretion. In exchange, you shut the door on this curiosity. And if I don't," his smile didn't falter, "then we bring it all down. Your name, your father's. Think that building's going to give him a pension once your allegations hit the press." Maya stared at the glass of water, then up at him. "You know what I hate about people like you?" she said quietly. "You think silence is the same thing as surrender." She stood. He didn't stop her. But as she walked out, she could feel it, that shift. The moment when a facade begins to crack, not from force, but from truth pressing against it too long. She left the building without another word. Back at home, she found her father in the kitchen, stirring a pot of black-eyed peas. The radio played soft Motown in the background. "You look like someone just kicked over your chessboard," he said. "More like they set the table on fire." He turned off the stove. "Then I hope you didn't come home to hide." "I didn't." She sat down. "I need your help." He listened as she laid it out, every threat, every file, every decision that needed to be made. When she finished, he nodded once. "So you've got enough to expose them, but not enough to protect the people who'll get caught in the backlash." "Exactly." He opened the cabinet and pulled down an old toolbox, setting it on the table with a heavy thud. "Then it's time you learned something about pressure," he said. Inside was a metal Objectoff clock, half puzzle. "Steam valve," he explained, "regulates force, not by stopping it, but by redirecting it." She stared at the mechanism, then back at him. "You want to break the machine," he said. "You'd better know how to bleed it first." The next morning, Maya made 3 moves. First, she scheduled a community transparency session with her team and several rural partners Stonebridge had been working with officially to demo their upcoming tool. Unofficially, it was a chance to leak the right details to the right eyes. Second, she contacted a journalist and old college friend now working for a nonprofit watchdog site. She gave her just enough breadcrumbs to start sniffing. And third, she called Ava. "They know," she said. "They confronted me." "What do you need?" Ava asked. "Cover. Not for me. For my team. My father. There'll be collateral if this goes public too fast." "We'll move up the timeline," Ava said. "But you need to give us a signal when you're ready." Maya thought for a moment. "When you see a press release titled, 'Rural Innovation Goes Live,' that's your green light." "Understood." The rest of the week moved like a fault line slowly tightening. Stratton kept his distance, but his lieutenants circled closer. One visited her office to check on workflow. Another casually asked about press management in case of bad optics. Maya smiled through it all, played her role. Meanwhile, her team pushed harder than ever, not because they knew everything, but because they believed in her, in what they were building. in what was not going to be sold for the wrong reasons. On Friday, she stood before them with a smile. "Next week," she said, "we show them what real innovation looks like, and what real integrity feels like." And they believed her, because she did, too. Outside, as the sun dipped low over Atlanta, Maya stood in the parking lot, staring at the Stonebridge sign glowing blue against the night. It looked like a monument, but she knew better. It was a mask, and soon, it would come off. The conference room was a transformed space. What had once been a sterile, high-walled space designed for board meetings now pulsed with a different energy. Posters lined the back wall displaying Maya's Rural Tech Initiative drones, monitoring crop health, AI-powered soil sensors, water-saving algorithms. The centerpiece, a prototype dashboard displayed on a sleek monitor, rotating through live demo simulations. But what really filled the room was people, a mix of engineers, community partners from rural Georgia and Alabama, and mid-level Stonebridge staff curious about what Maya's team had built. A few media faces lingered near the back, clutching notepads with half-smiles. Maya's old friend from the Watchdog outlet stood among them, camera tucked under her jacket. Stratton wasn't in the room. Not yet. But Maya knew he was watching. Through the glass, through the cameras, through someone's whispered update. He would never let something like this happen without monitoring it. Maya stood at the front of the room, wearing a navy blue blazer over a soft cotton blouse, the sleeves rolled back. She wasn't trying to impress. She was there to deliver. Behind her sat her team: Jackson, Camille, Rima, Julian, and Devante. Each had their part to play, and they looked ready, more than ready. They had spent weeks building something real, something clean, and they were about to place it under the lights. She took a breath, then spoke. "Thank you all for coming. When we started this initiative, we were told we were too small, too inexperienced, too scattered. That rural tech was too niche, too risky. But we had one thing that couldn't be questioned: purpose." The screen behind her changed images of crop fields, schoolhouses, dusty town halls, a farmer with his grandchild. Real innovation starts where the problems are personal, where the solutions aren't just algorithms, they're survival. Today, we're proud to unveil the first working version of our rural platform, built with one principle at its core: technology should serve people, not watch them. There was a pause. That sentence landed. Maya saw it in the way journalists glanced at one another, in the way two executives shifted in their seats, and then a click-a-photo was taken. From her friend in the back. That was the first domino. She nodded to Jackson. The demo began. They showed off smart irrigation modules, tuned for soil pH levels, adaptive planting schedules pulled from weather APIs, emergency weather text alerts customized for farming districts. It was elegant, affordable, powerful, and, most of all, untraceable. No background scripts, no permissions beyond what the user set. At the end, Rima stepped forward. "Everything you've seen is open code, transparent. We invite every community using this to audit, replicate, and even improve it, because trust is the real foundation of technology." The applause was real, not explosive, but steady, honest. And that's when the trap was triggered. Maya stepped forward again. "Before we conclude, there's one more thing we need to say. Not as developers, not as employees, but as citizens." She clicked the remote. The monitor behind her shifted again. This time, it showed code, obfuscated functions, logging scripts. A familiar tag appeared in the corner. Exec flag. A few people gasped. "This," Maya said, "is a piece of code embedded in multiple Stonebridge products. It collects audio, behavior data, and keystrokes. Silently, without user knowledge." Silence flooded the room. She clicked again. A short audio clip played. Stratton's voice, unmistakable. Imagine what marketing can do with this kind of insight. A reporter's pen froze mid-word. Two PR reps looked like their lungs had stopped working. "This isn't speculation," Maya said calmly. "It's fact. And it's been quietly targeting vulnerable institutions for months. Rural hospitals, school districts, even veterans services. We've submitted full documentation to the Department of Justice. As of this morning, a formal investigation is underway." No one clapped. No one moved. Then the doors opened. Stratton stepped in. His face was unreadable, composed, But Maya saw it, the barely restrained tension in his jaw, the faint tremor near his left temple. He walked straight to the front of the room, stopping just shy of her. "Quite a presentation," he said, his voice smooth. "I thought you might say that," Maya replied. He turned to the crowd. "Let me be clear. Stonebridge takes privacy seriously. These allegations are—" The monitor behind him lit up again. This time, a DOJ letterhead. "Investigation initiated pending federal compliance review." The screen spoke for itself. Gasps, murmurs, phones pulled out. Maya didn't say another word. Stratton stood frozen. Then, like a man suddenly underwater, he turned and walked out. No apology, no denial, just a slow, calculated retreat. The aftermath began within minutes. Ava McLaren arrived, flanked by 2 agents. They didn't need to say anything. Their badges did the talking. Stratton's office was locked down. Security logs pulled. Internal emails subpoenaed. By 4 p.m., his executive access had been suspended. By 5:15, news outlets were running headlines. Stonebridge CEO, under investigation for illegal surveillance. Rural tech director blows whistle on executive malpractice. The internet exploded. Maya stayed late at the office. Her team huddled in a quiet back room where the lights were still warm. They didn't talk much, just sat, surrounded by empty coffee cups and the fading echoes of a battle won not with fists but facts. Around 7:30 p.m., her father arrived. He stood at the edge of the doorway, arms crossed, just watching her. "You did it," he said. Maya turned, eyes tired but bright. "We did it." He stepped forward, placing something on the table. It was his old Stonebridge ID badge, the one he used the night she first walked into the building. "You carry this now," he said. Maya looked down at it, then up. "You sure?" He nodded. "You earned it, and more." She slid the badge into her pocket, then hugged him. It wasn't long, but it was full of everything that hadn't been said all these years. Outside the windows, the Atlanta skyline glittered. Somewhere out there, damage control teams were already spinning narratives, lawyers dialing phones, shareholders demanding answers. But inside this room, something rare was settling in. Not victory, vindication. Because when a system built to watch is finally made to answer, it doesn't roar. It shatters, and Maya Williams had lit the first crack. The following morning, Stonebridge was no longer Stonebridge. The building still stood tall. The glass still gleamed in the sun. The security guard at the front desk still offered the same nod. But something had shifted in the air, like walking into a room that had once held a loud argument, only to find it eerily quiet. There were no corporate smiles, no hollow greetings, just a buzz of whispers behind closed doors. Maya walked through the main lobby with steady steps. Her phone vibrated constantly, messages from news outlets, community leaders, government aides, and old classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. Some offered congratulations. Others asked for comment. Most just wanted to know what came next. She gave none of them an answer. Not yet. Instead, she headed to her office, sat at her desk, and opened her laptop. The DOJ had provided her with a secure channel. She typed only 2 words. "He's out." 30 seconds later, Ava McLaren replied, "Confirmed. Resignation submitted at 6:42 a.m. Board, accepted." Maya leaned back in her chair. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt a strange kind of gravity settle into her chest. A quiet knowing. Because taking down a man like Stratton didn't just collapse a throne, it sent tremors through every hallway he once ruled. By noon, 4 other executives had been placed on administrative leave. 2 project managers resigned. HR released a vague internal memo about organizational realignment. But everyone knew what it meant. The tower was tilting, and no one wanted to be the last standing when it fell. Maya's team met in the innovation suite, now unofficially renamed the War Room. Jackson brought in bagels. Rima made coffee. No one said much, but their glances carried something unspoken. Trust, relief, and the hint of a new question, what now? Maya answered it before anyone asked. "We keep building," she said. "Clean code, real purpose, but we're going to do something more." They looked up. "We're going to publish everything. Every component of our project, every test, every review process, full transparency. We're not just a product team anymore. We're a model for how it should be done." Julian, the team's quietest member, finally spoke. "Won't that draw pushback?" "It might," Maya said, "but they can't fire the truth." That night, she returned home late. Her father was in the living room, watching an old western on mute. The shadows of men on horseback flickered across the walls. "Whole world's talking about you," he said without looking over. "CNN ran your name. They even showed a clip from the demo." "I know," Maya said, setting down her bag. "You look tired." "I am." He nodded. "You proud?" Maya sat beside him. "I don't know yet." He turned off the television. "You did something good. But good doesn't always feel clean. Sometimes it feels like weight." She looked at him, the lines on his face catching the soft lamplight. "You carried this building for 30 years, Dad," she said. "They never knew your name, but you made it stand." He shrugged. "That's what you do when the roof matters more than the credit." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Maya said, "He left this morning. Stratton." Her father exhaled slowly. "Then maybe now it can breathe." By the end of the week, the fallout reached national headlines. Federal investigation widens. Stonebridge practices under scrutiny. Whistleblower Maya Williams, commended for exposing covert surveillance. The janitor's daughter who changed the game up, ed by Tech Ethics Council. Maya was asked to speak at a panel on ethical tech design. She declined. Then Harvard called. Then MIT. Then NPR. She turned them all down. Instead, she scheduled a visit to South Fulton Community College, her old school. No camera crews. No press. She met with students in a small lab room filled with old desktops and handwritten posters about JavaScript syntax. They asked questions not about fame, but about access, about how to be heard when you came from nowhere. And she told them the truth. You don't need to be loud. You just need to be right and relentless. On her way out, the dean stopped her. "You've put us on the map, Maya. You made us proud." She smiled, but gently. "I didn't do this for a map. I did it because no one else was looking." The DOJ's next phase began quietly. A second round of subpoenas. A sealed indictment against Stratton. 3 subpoenas delivered to former board members. Ava kept Maya in the loop, but now from a distance. The heavy lifting had moved to the courts. Maya's focus returned to the product. Her team renamed the platform Clarity. Simply, honest. It launched first in a small farming town in southern Georgia. Maya had visited with her father when she was 10. Within 2 weeks, it helped reduce irrigation waste by 43%. Schools started using it for weather alerts and resource planning. A veterans clinic adopted a modified dashboard for appointment optimization. None of it went viral, and that was exactly the point. It was quiet success, quiet progress, and it changed lives. One afternoon, as she was cleaning out her email inbox, Maya found a message that made her freeze. Subject line, "For her eyes only." Sender, unknown. Attached, a single audio clip. She hesitated, then clicked. Stratton's voice. Low, quiet. A private message, perhaps never meant to be heard. "If she brings me down, fine. Let her. But one day, she'll see. The world doesn't reward truth. It punishes it. And when she's standing in the ashes of her good intentions, I'll be the one smiling." Maya stared at the screen. For a long time, she didn't move. Then she smiled. Not with pride, not with arrogance, but with calm. Because Stratton had misunderstood everything. She hadn't burned anything down. She'd just let the sunlight in. That evening, Maya stood once more in the lobby of Stonebridge, though it would soon bear a new name. She looked up at the high ceilings, the polished floors. She saw the janitor sweeping near the back entrance. He nodded at her. She nodded back. Because the real work never happened in the spotlight. It happened in the corners, in the quiet, in the truth whispered beneath the weight of false power. She stepped outside, and the doors behind her closed not with finality, but with promise. Tomorrow, there would be more to build, more to repair, more to protect. But tonight, for the first time, the silence felt right, and she walked into it, ready. 3 weeks had passed since the day the company's facade cracked in front of the entire tech world. Maya stood in front of the same glass building that had once looked too big to touch, let alone change. Now the letters above the entrance no longer read, Stonebridge Technologies. The new name had not been announced yet. For now, the logo space remained a blank wall. Fitting, she thought. Let it be blank for a while. Let it breathe. Inside, the halls felt lighter. Not empty, not jubilant but lighter. The kind of weightlessness that comes not from celebration, but from the absence of fear. Departments operated without walking on eggshells. Meetings happened without hidden recordings or polite nods masking deep unease. The surveillance culture Stratton had cultivated was gone, like a predator removed from a forest where the animals had adapted only to hide. Maya moved through the building with purpose. She didn't carry authority in her voice or in her posture. She never needed to. She carried it in presence. The interns she'd fought to bring in from rural colleges were now seated in shared workspaces, collaborating with senior engineers. Jackson had taken over as lead back-end architect. Camille had transitioned to strategic outreach. Rima was co-writing ethics protocols for software development. They were building, yes, but they were also restoring. That morning, Maya entered the same executive boardroom, where Stratton had once tried to buy her silence with power. Now she stood at the head of the table for a different kind of conversation. The company's interim leadership had gathered out a mix of old board members newly shaken into humility, and new voices added in the wake of public scrutiny. The DOJ had cleared Maya to share limited findings and offer guidance on internal reforms. And they listened. They had to. "We have a choice," Maya said calmly, her fingers resting on the edge of the table. "We can rebrand this company and hope the world forgets, or we can remake it and ensure we never forget. This isn't just about software. It's about culture, trust, the kind you build, not with marketing, but with accountability." One of the senior board members, a woman in her 60s with a steel-colored bob and a Wall Street resume, asked, "What would that actually look like?" Maya gestured to the digital board behind her. A slide lit up. No anonymous data tracking, all analytics opt-in, open-source review panels, third-party audits, community partnerships with direct voting on feature development. And we establish an ethics council not under legal, not under PR, but independent, led by people with no stake in profit margins. There were murmurs. "That's idealistic," someone said. "It's necessary," Maya replied. "This company made its name on the backs of people who were never meant to be heard. You want a future? Let them speak now." No one spoke against her. The silence in the room wasn't resistance. It was reflection. That afternoon, Maya returned to her floor. Her team was gathered in the common area, surrounded by whiteboards filled with notes, mock-ups, and scraps of poetry. Camille had started a tradition of writing one quote per week on the office wall. Today's read, "Justice is not only the final blow, it is the first refusal to stay silent." Maya smiled. She sat down with them. "We're going to host a town hall." Rima raised an eyebrow. "With press?" "Number. With users, farmers, teachers, veterans, anyone who ever trusted the tools we built without knowing how we used them. We invite them in, we show them the architecture, the change, and we let them challenge it." Julian looked uncertain. "What if they're angry?" "They should be," Maya said. "And we listen." No one argued. They started drafting the agenda. That evening, Maya walked home. Not drove. Walked. She passed the bakery where her father used to bring day-old loaves, the park bench where she once cried over her first rejection letter from a tech incubator, the sidewalk where she'd once slipped in the rain, knees bloodied, laptop bag soaked, and still gone home to code until 2 a.m. Now, those places felt like pages in a book she had written backward starting at the end, finally learning what the beginning meant. At home, she found her father in the kitchen, making his classic Sunday chili even though it was only Thursday. "Something good happened?" she asked. He stirred without turning. "You tell me." She poured herself water, then leaned against the counter. "We're going to open the doors." He nodded. "Good. Real good. But it's risky. Everything worth doing is." She paused. "You still remember that first day? When I came back from the interview and told you about Stratton? I remember your face. It was fire and doubt, mixed together. I was scared." He handed her a spoonful of chili to taste. "And you stayed." They ate together without words for a while. Then he said, "They can call you a whistleblower, a leader, a visionary, whatever headline they want, but you'll always be one thing, no matter what." She looked up. "What's that?" "My daughter." She smiled. That night, Maya wrote something for the first time in weeks, not code, not reports, but a personal reflection. She didn't know what it would become. Maybe nothing, maybe something. It began simply. This isn't the story of a girl who stood up. It's the story of the silence that cracked when she did. She closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a while, listening to the city, to the stillness, to the distant echo of systems failing and people waking. There was more work to do. But for the first time in her life, she knew the difference between working for someone and working for something. And that made all the difference. The invitation was simple. A folded cream cardstock with clean serif lettering. No corporate logos. No legal disclaimers. Just a date, a time, a location, and a question printed across the center in bold black ink. What kind of company do you want us to be? Maya had insisted it come that way. No PR spin. No condescension. Just honesty. The town hall was set in an old civic center in the west end of Atlanta, where folding chairs creaked and the walls still smelled faintly of varnished wood and hope. It wasn't meant to impress. It was meant to listen. The day of the event arrived under a sky of tempered gold. Maya stood behind the curtain of the modest stage, watching as people filed in. Farmers with worn jeans and sun-creased eyes. Librarians. Veterans. Small business owners. Grandmothers. Even a few skeptical developers, arms crossed and guarded. There were no name tags. Just story tags. Single mother. High school teacher. Disabled veteran. Each one more relevant than any resume. Jackson came up beside her, holding 2 mugs of lukewarm coffee. "They came," he whispered, handing one to her. "They did," she said. "Now we have to earn it." At precisely 3 p.m., the lights dimmed. Maya stepped forward, not in a power suit or behind a podium, but in jeans, a navy sweater, and her father's old watch. She stood at the edge of the stage and let the silence settle before she spoke. "My name is Maya Williams," she began, voice steady. "I'm not a politician. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here because this company, this system broke something that belonged to all of us. Trust." There was a rustle in the room. People leaned forward. "I was raised in the basement of this company. My father swept its floors. I watched men in suits step over his mop without ever seeing his eyes. And I was supposed to do the same, keep my head down, be grateful for scraps." She paused. "I didn't." The room held its breath. "This company collected your data, sold your preferences, tracked your pain, all without your permission. And worse, it built tools that others used to hurt people like me, like you, quietly, invisibly. That is not innovation. That is betrayal." An older man in the second row, a Vietnam vet with silver hair and thick glasses, raised his hand. "How do we know this isn't just more theater?" he asked, voice gravelly but firm. Maya didn't flinch. "Because I'm not asking you to clap. I'm asking you to participate. You will vote today on what we build, how we audit, and who holds us accountable." A younger woman stood next. "I lost my job last year because of an algorithm one of your teams designed. It flagged me as a redundant risk factor after I requested leave to care for my mother. What do you say to that?" Maya looked her in the eye. "I'm sorry. That should never have happened. But apologies aren't the goal here. Change is. You'll find a booth outside after this session. Fill out a report. We will pay damages where we must. But more importantly, we will rewrite the systems that failed you." Hands went up, one after another, and Maya answered them all. Not as a CEO, not as a savior, but as a citizen. By evening, the sun had sunk low, casting long amber beams through the civic center windows. Most of the crowd had filtered out, but a few lingered. One of them was an older black woman in a floral dress and orthopedic shoes. She walked slowly toward Maya as the cleanup began. "My husband used to mop those same floors with your daddy," she said softly. "He always told me the building would change when the janitor's daughter walked back through the front door, not as a cleaner, but as a leader." Maya blinked hard. "What was his name?" "Charles Hightower." Maya smiled, tears glistening at the corners of her eyes. "I remember him. He used to save me the blueberry muffins they were about to throw out." The woman nodded. "You remembered the kindness. That's why you're here." They hugged. No more words were needed. The following week, national media picked up the town hall story. Not because of a scandal, but because of the novelty. A tech company asking ordinary people for governance. Some praised it, some mocked it, but most listened. Meanwhile, Maya and her team continued. The new ethics council was formed. It included not just academics and engineers, but a high school counselor, a disabled veteran, a software engineer turned whistleblower, and Rima, who had gone from a part-time data clerk to one of the fiercest voices for transparency. One night, as Maya stayed late reviewing reports, a familiar knock came at the door. It was Camille. "Got a minute?" "Always." Camille sat across from her, holding a small envelope. "What's this?" Maya asked. Camille smiled. "A formal job offer. For you." Maya raised an eyebrow. "From?" "The board. They want you to take the permanent CEO position." Silence. Then Maya leaned back, eyes scanning the ceiling tiles. "I don't know if I want that." Camille didn't look surprised. "You've already done the job. Why not get the title?" "Because titles come with power, and power can dilute truth. I think I'm more useful just being me." Camille studied her. "So what will you say?" "I'll say thank you, and I'll say no." Camille grinned. "You know that'll scare them, right?" "Good." On a rainy Thursday morning, Maya returned to the building, this time with her father. The name had finally changed. The new sign read, "Reclaim Systems." Maya whispered it aloud. "Reclaim." Robert smiled. Fitting. Inside the lobby, a bronze sculpture had been unveiled. Not a bust, not a plaque, but a simple, life-size statue of a janitor head bowed, hands resting on a mop handle, face serene. The inscription read, "To the ones who cleaned up the mess before anyone noticed it was there." Maya's hand slipped into her father's plaque. "I want to add a quote to the wall," she said. "What quote?" She turned to him, smiling through tears. "Justice doesn't wait for permission." He nodded slowly. "That's a good one." They stood in silence as employees walked past, some nodding in recognition, others unaware of the full story behind the two figures near the statue. It didn't matter. Maya knew. And that was enough. Because justice wasn't about glory. It wasn't loud. It was steady. It was tireless. And it had finally found its way home. The silence in the boardroom was thunderous. Everyone had turned to face Maya, but she wasn't looking at them. Her gaze was fixed on the glass wall, her eyes unreadable. The morning sunlight filtered through the windows, throwing long, pale shadows across the table. Darius Whitmore sat across from her, pale and shaken. The proud, powerful CEO looked like a man who had just seen the edge of his empire crumble beneath his polished shoes. Maya took a breath, steady and deep, then turned back to the table. "As I mentioned," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "the misdirected funds weren't just an oversight. They were deliberately buried in quarterly subsidiary rollovers and offshore shell companies tied to your private foundation." "Hi." One of the board members, a gray-haired woman in a burgundy suit, leaned forward. "And you're sure about this?" Maya didn't flinch. "I ran the numbers 3 times. I cross-verified transaction IDs with the internal audit logs. They were altered right before quarterly filings." A beat. Then murmurs erupted around the room, chaotic, overlapping, urgent. Some members looked stunned, others angry, but none looked at Darius. "You're saying Whitmore Tech's CEO embezzled from his own shareholders?" someone finally asked. "No," Maya said, her voice sharper now, more decisive. "I'm saying he embezzled from the communities his foundation claimed to support. The housing grants in Detroit? They never made it to the families. The Tech Education Fund for Veterans? Vanished into a dummy account controlled by an LLC in the Cayman Islands." She turned slowly to face Darius. "You weren't just corrupt, Mr. Whitmore. You were cruel." Darius tried to open his mouth, but no words came out. His jaw moved like a man choking on silence. Finally, he managed a whisper. "You don't understand the pressure, the expectations." "Don't you dare," Maya said, and now her voice carried steel. "You sat in this room, week after week, dismissing people who came to you with real needs. You mocked me the first day I walked in. You laughed when you thought I was beneath you." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "I watched my father work this building for 30 years. He opened your doors, cleaned your floors, and never once asked for anything but respect. You gave him nothing." Darius was trembling now, not in fear, but in the sudden realization that everything he had built was crumbling. The foundation of power he thought unshakable was now cracked beyond repair, and the woman standing before him was the one holding the hammer. "I'll resign," he said quietly. Maya stepped forward. "It's too late for that." She reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive, placing it gently on the polished table. "This contains every file, every transfer, every forged signature. I've already submitted a report to the SEC. This meeting was a courtesy." The legal counsel, a sharp-eyed man who had been silent the entire time, leaned in to take the drive. "I'll need to review this immediately." Maya nodded. "I've also spoken with a reporter from The Atlantic. They'll break the story in 24 hours. The board fell into stunned silence again. Then, slowly, the woman in the burgundy suit stood up. She turned to Darius. "Mr. Whitmore, your actions have endangered this company's integrity, our investors, and the lives of thousands who trusted our mission. I'll be calling for a special vote of no confident effective immediately." Darius lowered his head. "Understood." He rose, slowly, and walked out of the room like a man carrying the weight of a ruined legacy. No one stopped him. After the door closed, the tension slowly seeped out of the room. Someone let out a breath they'd been holding. Another adjusted their tie, as if waking from a spell. Then the woman turned back to Maya. "What's your name again?" "Maya Williams." The woman extended a hand. "Miss Williams, I think we need to talk." Later that evening, Maya sat on the edge of the old stone fountain outside the Whitmore Tech headquarters. The city around her buzzed with the sounds of traffic and life. She looked down at her phone, scrolling past headlines, each one carrying her name. Whistleblower exposes CEO in stunning corporate takedown. Janitor's daughter uncovers billion-dollar scandal. A new kind of power. The rise of Maya Williams. But none of that felt real yet. What did feel real was the breeze on her skin, the smell of fresh rain on concrete, the warm vibration in her palm as her phone buzzed with messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. Then came a familiar voice. "Maya." She looked up. Her father stood at the edge of the plaza, still in his janitor's uniform, holding a paper bag in one hand and a worried smile on his face. "You forgot your lunch again," he said. She let out a soft laugh. "Dad, I think it's a little late for lunch." He walked over and sat beside her. "Doesn't matter. You still need to eat." She took the bag, opened it, and found a peanut butter sandwich just like the ones he made when she was a kid. Her eyes welled up, and this time, she let the tears fall. "I didn't think it would feel like this," she whispered. Her father looked at her gently. "Like what?" "Lonely. Even after everything. It still feels like I'm standing alone." He nodded. "That's because the mountaintop's a quiet place, baby. But look around, you didn't climb it for the view. You climbed it to build something better." She wiped her eyes and smiled. "You always know what to say. I'm just proud of you, Maya. Proud of the woman you've become. And your mama. If she could see you right now." He trailed off, voice cracking. They sat together in silence, the city lights flickering around them. And for the first time that day, Maya let herself exhale not with tension, but with peace. Not because the fight was over, but because she had won it the right way. With integrity, with courage, and with the quiet, unshakable dignity of a janitor's daughter who knew her worth long before the world did.